Hello and welcome back to another FPL video. Today we're taking a look at our team selection for the quick turnaround that is Game Week 14. It is Monday as I'm recording this. This will be going out on Tuesday morning, and Game Week 13 has just finished. So I do apologise that there is no stats show this week, but there will be another one out for this week as we look ahead to Game Week 15 this weekend. Now, an absolutely brilliant week again for me in Game Week 13. Obviously I used the free hit. You can see the team on screen. That is the final team that I ended up going for, and we are now sitting at a massive rank of 4,151st, which I think is the best I've ever had in FPL that the 4 seasons I have played it, and absolutely smashing it at the minute, and very, very excited to see where things are going to end up. But this is how the team looked, as we just mentioned, and I made a couple of changes from the team selection video. I did post on Twitter about it before the deadline, what the team was going to be looking like, and this is kind of what I went for. A couple of disappointing ones. It could have been, an amazing week. Had I changed a few things, but some of my guys ended up doing fantastically. I ended up going for the double Villa defence in Martinez and Cash. That was out of the 3 big defences last week on the free hit, Manchester City, Aston Villa and Brentford, they were the only ones that did keep the clean sheet. So I'm glad I did go for the double up with those guys. Only clean sheets from both Martinez and Cash. Vandenberg I ended up going for. I was always going to go for him over Nathan Collins, if I'm honest, hoping that he was going to pick up a goal. Collins did end up the better option. He picked up the DEFCONs, which Vandenberg didn't get, but that's not the end of the world. And then I went for the double City defence, which at the end of the day was pretty disappointing because the other alternative was going for Phil Foden in midfield, who ended up picking up a 15-pointer. And I think at the end of the day, Foden was the only player on the free hit that I did miss out on, that was heavily considered by a lot of people using the free hit. So I had Nunes and I had O'Reilly, both got an assist very early on, and I was very excited. Had they kept that clean sheet, we'd have probably been looking at double digit hauls from both of those guys. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and I get 7 points between them and missed out on Phil Foden, which again I'm not really that bothered about because my midfielders still done really well. Had Van Dijk, went for Van Dijk late on, hoping he was going to score a header. Liverpool still had decent clean sheet odds, and I was quite confident with Van Dijk potentially picking up DEFCONs as well. He never got the goal, he never got the DEFCONs, but he got the clean sheet. So 6 points was really nice from him because he was a pretty decent differential on the free hit as well. In midfield, I went for Dango over Shadi in the end, which was a massive decision. 12 points for Dango, which was fantastic. Nothing really did change between those two. I think Dango just kind of had better stats per 90, and positionally it looked as though it was going to be a better game for him, so that's why I did go for Dango in the end. Gakpo obviously doubled up with him and Salah. Salah didn't play any minutes. I'm just glad that I did go for at least one bench player. It was a shame that it ended up being Mbuemo, who only got 1 point. But yeah, I mean, I probably would have been better off if Salah had just played and came on in the 90th minute and get the same amount of points. But glad I at least doubled up, because again, if I was going to pick another midfielder, it would have been Gakpo that came out. So if it was going to be Phil Foden, for example, maybe I would have only got 1 extra point. So I'm not really too bothered about that one. Unfortunate that Haaland never done too well, but again, everyone had him captain, so it's not the end of the world. And of course, Thiago picked up 13 points, which kind of summed everything up. So we get a game week rank of 71,000, which is absolutely huge, and will over doubled the game week average as well, which takes me to 4k. So back to my normal team this week. As it stands, this is how it is looking, and a couple of problems and a couple of things I wanted to talk about going into this. So by the time Game Week 16 comes around, I think it's after the Game Week 16 deadline, everyone gets topped up to 5 transfers. So we've got 3 weeks remaining until AFCON, 3 game weeks remaining. So we've got Game Week 14, Game Week 15 and Game Week 16 to try and get by before we get our free transfers. Now my team this week is looking very decent for the most part. apart, but there's clearly a few things that need to be changed. So first things first, Nick Pope is causing a little bit of an issue with for me. He's picked up a groin injury. Ramsdale obviously played at the weekend, which I didn't have to worry about, with that free hit. But going forward, I think he's going to get a scan in the next few days. With game week 14 coming so closely, it looks as though Pope is going to be missing out game week 14. Now I'm going to start him because there's no chance that he comes off the bench anyway, so if he plays, and if he doesn't, then I'll get Dubravka off the bench. Now with goalkeepers not really having a high ceiling, it's not really going to be too much of a priority move for me. If I end up playing Dubravka, that's just kind of how it's going to be. Even if Pope was to keep a clean sheet, you'd be looking at 6 points maybe. So even if Dubravka's going to play, pick up some saves against Palace, I'm not expecting a clean sheet. Maybe he gets 2 or 3 points, which Pope has really got in the last few weeks anyway. So it's not really a priority move for me. I think maybe down the line when I start needing to use my transfers in game week 15 and 16, then maybe I could look at moving on Pope to someone a little bit different. But that is a problem that I'm going to worry about in the next week or two with the following game weeks. So the rest of my team, I'm quite happy with the way most of it is looking. Sunderland is a nice fixture for Van Dijk. Munoz and Timber with nice fixtures. The entire midfield has good fixtures. Saka, Semenyo, and Ndiaye and Enzo. And then I've got Haaland and Mateta as well. All players who I think are pretty minutes nailed. I think something that I did want to talk about this week was the importance of having a lot of flexibility in the team when the schedule was so tight. I think we've got 5 game weeks in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. The next 3 or 4 weeks, I think there's 5 game weeks, and obviously we've got European fixtures in and amongst all that as well. So I think it's trying to make sure that you've got a lot of players that are minutes guaranteed, that aren't early substitution prone and stuff like that, and making sure that if someone is going to get benched, then that's you've got a good replacement in place for that. Now, one thing that I'm suffering with myself this week is that suspension of Senesi. He picked up a yellow card, and that is something that we're going to have to worry about over the next month, because there is a lot of players who are looking at yellows, 4 yellow cards, 3 yellow cards, who could get suspended in the next week or two. So I'll pop a little graphic on screen from FPL Foco that kind of shows the players that are on 3 or 4 yellow cards based on the ownership. Now, the only one that I really have to worry about in the short term is Daniel Munoz, who's on 4 yellow cards right now. So 1 more yellow card and he's going to be suspended, which means again I'm going to have a decent replacement lined up. The other one being Semenyo, who's currently on 3 yellow cards as well. And I also need to worry about Ndiaye, who is going to be moving to AFCON, but at that point I'm going to get 5 free transfers, so it's not really a worry for the next couple of weeks. So Semenyo and Munoz, 2 players that I'm going to have to watch out for, mainly so Munoz. And I think this week kind of taught me a bit of a lesson with the suspensions. I've got Senesi out injured, and I've got Krupi Jr. and King as my 2 options off the bench, or Anderson, who has a difficult fixture this week. So I think this week and for the coming weeks, I want to make sure I've got enough bench rotation that I'm not going to be forced into making transfers or taking -4s. So this week I want to make a transfer somewhere that gives me an extra option on the bench. Now, as you can see below me, I've got 2.3 million in the bank, and I'm going to be looking to take out one of Krupi Jr. or Josh King. Now, Krupi Jr. I brought in recently. He has, I'm going to be honest, he's going to stay in the team. I don't want to move back into a 3 up front. Thiago obviously being a potential option, a really good value striker, but I don't want to go for the 3 up front anymore. I just think right now the midfielders and defenders are the ones that are picking up the points, and I'd rather have a cheap striker than any other position. If I want to get Thiago or something in future, then I can always move on Mateta instead. So this week I'm going to be looking at moving on Josh King to give myself another option on the bench. With this tight schedule, I just want to be able to have a lot of flexibility if someone gets benched or if someone gets suspended over the next couple of weeks. So just bringing things over to the midfielder cheat sheet again, taking the inspiration from FPL Fran's cheat sheet, this is the list of midfielders that I was interested in, and I have ranked them as to best to worst based on their prices. So you can kind of see some underlying stats and their upcoming fixtures on who looks best. Now obviously I've got 2.3 million in the bank and I'm looking to get rid of Josh King, who is 4.5 million. So that gives me 6.8 million to play with a potential midfielder. So as good as some of those premium midfielders look, unfortunately it's not really an option for me to bring in this week. Someone like a Bruno Fernandes is definitely someone that I would quite like. And there's a couple of other options in there, but unfortunately they are just out of the price range. And going forward, I kind of want to have someone that I'm happy to bench but happy to play at the same time. So we're looking at the kind of cheaper range here, the top three categories. The very cheap range in Dewsbury Hall, Xhaka and King. The middle kind of range in Minty, Anderson and Polina, and then the 6.5 kind of range with Enzo, Rice, Szoboszlai and Dye and GAMEWEEK from Newcastle. Now again, I've already got Enzo, I've already got Dye. So in terms of price points, I don't really want to add in a third player at that price point because it kind of limits me and who I can get for replacements. So I do still think Enzo, based on what I'm looking at in the stats, is the best option at that kind of price range. So I'm happy enough to just kind of rule that out. And Dye doesn't look too great compared to the likes of Szoboszlai and Rice, who look like better options. But again, I'm looking for a player that I'm going to be happy to bench most weeks. So it's really just going to be a cheaper option that's going to be good for me. And then I'll keep a lot of money in the bank for future upcoming transfers or a potential Ndiaye replacement if I want to upgrade him to a more expensive midfielder. So that kind of rules out that price point as well, which then leaves me with the Minty and downwards in terms of prices. Now Minty looks like a really good option. He's got Aston Villa at home, West Ham at home in the next two matches. Decent predicted points, expected points, according to Fantasy Football Hub on 13.4. A decent non-pen XG per 90 at 0.18. Good expected assists and decent amount of shots per 90 as well. Another one that I really like is Anderson. He's only 5.3 million, so you're looking at $1 million cheaper than Minty, with also pretty decent fixtures, more expected points than Minty as well. Not as good non-pen XG, but pretty much similar for expected assists per 90 and similar shots per 90 as well. And obviously Anderson has that DEFCON backup, the best DEFCON midfielder in the game right now, and doing absolutely fantastic for picking up those 2 points every single game. Now in terms of the actual cheap options, King doesn't look great at all, which again is another reason why I will be getting rid of him, because in no real situation am I going to have King in my starting 11. I would rather have a -4 or take a -4 than have to do that. So Dewsbury Hall looks really nice. He's my favourite of those options. I did think Xhaka was going to be a good option, but his stats aren't actually that great compared to what I was expecting, and the fixtures look horrendous as well. So Dewsbury Hall looks like a pretty decent option. Decent non-pen XG per 90. Pretty nice expected assists per 90 as well. And it's the shots and the DEFCONs that kind of let him down just a tiny bit. So I'm going to be honest, already made this decision. I'm going to go for Elliot Anderson. I did take him out only like 2-3 weeks ago. Obviously I ended up taking out before the Leeds game, then he scored a penalty, then he got an assist after me having him since game week 1 and getting one attack in return, I think, in 11 game weeks. So that just seems to be kind of how FPL goes, isn't it? But it's another week where I'm doing a transfer out and then a few weeks bringing that same player back in. I feel like I've done that a couple of times this season. But again, I've got a very solid defence and very solid core team where I'm quite happy to kind of rotate players with my transfers every couple of weeks. And right now, Anderson is looking really nice with some nice expected points, good enough expected assists to potentially get another attack in return, and it's good to know that he's the backup penalty taker when Morgan Gibbs-White isn't on the pitch as well. But my main reason for picking him is because of the consistent DEFCONs. I did take him out for Enzo Fernandez last time because he was my like my fourth midfielder. I still had Josh King at the time. Now I'm going to be bringing him in to be my fifth midfielder, and he's just going to be someone that sits on the bench the majority of the time, but I'll be very happy to play in any fixture. Like, even if Anderson was playing against Arsenal one week, or Liverpool one week, or Man City one week, I would still be happy to play him, because I know he gets those DEFCONs, and I can still get 4+ points from Anderson, and it doesn't really force a transfer out of me, and I'm happy to play him in those weeks. It was the same reason like I used him before, but now I've kind of got him as like a backup to the backup if I really need to use that substitution. If I really need to use my bench, then I'm happy enough to be playing him. So to me, that kind of makes a little bit more sense than transferring in someone like Minty, who's going to cost me $1 million more, and a lot of the time I'm going to be a bit worried about benching him, and if he does have a difficult fixture, I'm not going to want to play him in my starting 11 either. At least I know with Anderson, he's consistent, he gets 4 points at least in most games, and I can really play him in any fixture I want, so he is really a fantastic backup, and he is only 0.8 more than Josh King is, so it feels like it's a nice transfer, it feels like it's a stable transfer. Obviously, I can use transfers willy-nilly right now because there's no real need to save, because we're getting topped up to 5 in 3 weeks' time. So this is just kind of, focusing on the team, making sure the team structure is okay for a busy schedule in the next couple of game weeks. And that is going to leave my team looking like this for this week. So we're going to be doing a 3-5-2. And as you can see with the bench, it's now looking a lot stronger. I'm going to have Anderson on the bench. It means I don't have to play him against Manchester City this week. He is going to be my first bench player who, again, can come in and out. And with that busy schedule, if someone like Anderson doesn't have a good fixture, then I can play the other Anderson and play him, in any fixture really. So Anderson's basically going to be my backup whenever my other Anderson, Elliot Anderson's going to be my backup when Joachim Anderson has a bad fixture, if that makes sense. So most weeks Senesy's going to come in and play. He's, consistent with the DEFCONs. Bournemouth haven't been great defensively, but I will expect that to change as their form continues. I think he's pretty much going to be a season keeper for me, and it is giving me a very flexible team, because now I've got 14 out of my 15 players playable. I think Krippy Jr. is probably the only one there that I wouldn't be comfortable playing in my starting 11. It does mean that Nick Pope is going to be playing this week, and he probably will be my transfer for game week 15 at the weekend. It's just it's not really a priority right now when I can just play Dubravka and still get a couple of points out of him, hopefully, at least as long as nothing goes wrong, touch wood. And then that's kind of how the team is going to look. So I'm going to go for Erling Haaland captain. Again, a lot of people seem to be going against it, maybe going for a Saka this week, but Fulham still aren't performing fantastically, and I'm not really in a position right now where I need to be going for a differential captain, so I'm just going to play it safe and go for Erling Haaland in there. So that is going to be the end of the video. Hopefully you did, hopefully that meant something. Hopefully you kind of learned a few things from that. I thought I'd just talk about my current thinking with my team and how I can see the game going in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully I'm able to maintain this rank, which would be absolutely fantastic heading into Christmas. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. We'll have our stat show, of course, back again for game week 15, so make sure to keep an eye out on that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.